Hey, dreamer. Welcome to Sleep Theory. Before we drift off, tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Tap that like button and subscribe. It helps the algorithm share this with more people like us.
Our mind, one of the greatest mysteries. Sometimes it plays such strange games that the line between reality and imagination blurs. What if you felt dead? Or if you thought that imposters had replaced your loved ones? There are psychological syndromes in the world that prove how fragile and complex the human mind is. From Codard syndrome to Capgras, from exploding head syndrome to vampirism, many strange and eerie conditions exist. Some are fatal, others are simply disorders that push the boundaries of the mind. In this video, we will dive into the darkest corners of the human mind. We will explore many interesting cases, from those who believe they are animals to those who hide from sunlight, and even those who laugh uncontrollably to the point of death. If you're ready, let's embark on a journey into the shadows of your subconscious. Before we start, just a quick reminder. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Now, let's get into it. Codard syndrome or walking corpse syndrome, the darkest trap of the mind. Sometimes reality gets lost in the games of the mind. The world turns into a mist that disappears when you try to touch it, and your body becomes something that once belonged to you, but now feels like an empty shell. This is exactly how Codard syndrome manifests: a psychological abyss where the boundaries of existence blur. Feeling dead while still alive. Codard syndrome, also known as walking corpse syndrome, is a rare but severe psychiatric disorder in which individuals believe they are dead, decaying, missing organs, or have never existed at all. Some patients merely believe they are deceased, while others are convinced that their blood has been drained, their organs have rotted away, or their bodies have become an empty husk. In extreme cases, individuals completely deny their existence, believing that the world itself is an illusion, the mirror of nothingness and the vanishing self. One of the most unsettling experiences for Codard patients is looking into a mirror. Often, they see themselves as hollow, decayed, or entirely erased. Their faces are unrecognizable, their skin appears lifeless, and their eyes seem devoid of any soul. Some even claim they have no reflection at all. This is where derealization, detachment from reality, and depersonalization, alienation from the self become prominent. The individual begins to believe that reality itself is false, that the people around them do not truly exist, and that they are simply drifting as a lifeless entity through an artificial world. The dead do not eat. One of the most dangerous aspects of Codard syndrome is that patients reject their physiological needs. After all, why would a dead person eat? If their stomach no longer functions, if their blood no longer circulates, if their organs are lifeless, then hunger and thirst must also be illusions. This belief can lead to fatal consequences. Many Codard syndrome patients have starved to death because their brains completely erased the necessity of food and water. When the mind decides that the body no longer exists, physical deterioration soon follows. A crisis of existence, or the darkest trick of the mind. Codard syndrome is one of the most extreme examples of how fragile and complex the human mind can be. It is a psychological labyrinth where the boundaries between reality and delusion completely dissolve, leading to a terrifying confrontation with existence itself. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing your body no longer exists. Or looking into a mirror and believing you died long ago. Perhaps the scariest thing about Codard syndrome is this: being trapped in an illusion you can never recognize as false. Alice in Wonderland syndrome, when reality becomes a dream. Reality is not always as stable as we think. What if the world around you suddenly started shifting, objects growing and shrinking, time stretching and compressing, your own body distorting beyond recognition? This is not a fantasy, but a real neurological condition known as Alice in Wonderland syndrome, AIS. What is Alice in Wonderland syndrome? Alice in Wonderland syndrome is a rare neurological disorder that distorts perception, space, time, and even one's own body image. People who experience AIS report that their surroundings appear to shrink micropsia or enlarge macropsia, much like Alice's adventures in Lewis Carroll's famous tale. They may feel as if their body is stretching like rubber or shrinking into itself, leading to an unsettling detachment from reality. The hallucinations of a distorted world. Imagine waking up and feeling like your hands are suddenly 3 times their normal size, or that your legs are too short to reach the floor. The furniture in your room may appear to move closer or further away, and the walls might feel like they are breathing. Some people report hearing sounds that are abnormally loud or extremely distant, as if their senses are detached from reality. AIS affects more than just vision. The perception of time can also be altered. A few seconds might feel like hours, or an entire day might pass in what seems like a few minutes. Some patients describe walking down a hallway that seems to stretch endlessly, even though they know it should be short. These hallucinatory experiences can be terrifying, leaving the person questioning what is real and what is illusion, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. Alice in Wonderland syndrome is a fascinating and eerie glimpse into the fragility of human perception. It is a reminder that what we see, hear, and feel is not always a perfect reflection of reality, but rather an interpretation shaped by the brain. What if, one day, your world suddenly started to shift? Would you recognize the illusion, or would you, like Alice, fall deeper into Wonderland? Capgras syndrome, when loved ones become strangers. What if one day you looked at your best friend, your parent, or even your spouse, and you were convinced that they were an imposter? That the person in front of you looked exactly like them, spoke like them, acted like them. Yet deep inside, you just knew it wasn't really them. This is the terrifying reality of Capgras syndrome, a rare delusional disorder that makes people believe that their loved ones have been replaced by identical imposters. What is Capgras syndrome? Capgras syndrome is a rare neurological and psychiatric condition in which a person firmly believes that someone close to them has been replaced by an identical-looking double. This imposter delusion is most commonly directed at spouses, parents, or siblings, but in some cases, people have believed that pets, familiar objects, or even their own reflection were fake copies. The mind's betrayal. Why does Capgras syndrome occur? Capgras syndrome is believed to be caused by a disconnect between the brain's facial recognition system and its emotional response system. Normally, when we see a familiar face, 2 things happen in the brain. The temporal lobe recognizes the face as familiar. The limbic system triggers an emotional connection, reinforcing the feeling of familiarity. In Capgras syndrome, this emotional connection is broken. The person can still recognize the face of their loved one, but they feel no emotional response to them. This creates a bizarre and unsettling sensation. They look like my wife, but it doesn't feel like my wife, leading the brain to invent an explanation. The real person must have been replaced by an imposter. The emotional toll of Capgras syndrome. Capgras syndrome can be deeply distressing, both for the affected person and their loved ones. Imagine being told by your own child that you are not their real parent, or by your spouse that you are a fraudulent copy of the person they married. Many sufferers experience fear, paranoia, and even aggression toward the imposters, believing them to be dangerous. Some patients go to extreme lengths to prove their delusion, refusing to live with their fake spouse, avoiding their family, or even calling the police. Since the delusion feels completely real to them, logical explanations rarely help. A fractured reality, when trust is broken. Capgras syndrome is one of the most chilling examples of how fragile our perception of reality can be. It raises unsettling questions about identity, recognition, and trust if you woke up tomorrow and felt that the people you loved were strangers in disguise. How would you ever know it was real? Laughing death syndrome, Kuru disease, the fatal laughter of the brain. Laughter is often a sign of joy, but what if it became a symptom of your own slow and inevitable death? Imagine laughing uncontrollably, not because of happiness, but because your brain is being destroyed. This is the horrifying reality of Kuru disease, also known as laughing death syndrome, a rare and fatal neurological disorder that once devastated entire communities. What is Kuru disease? Kuru is a neurodegenerative prion disease that affects the brain, causing tremors, muscle weakness, and uncontrollable bursts of laughter, eventually leading to death. The name Kuru comes from the 4 people of Papua New Guinea, where the disease was first identified. In their language, Kuru means to shake, referring to the severe tremors that characterize the illness. Kuru is part of the transmissible spongiform encephalopathy TSE family, which includes Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease CGD and mad cow disease. These diseases are caused by prions, misfolded proteins that trigger a chain reaction in the brain, turning it into a sponge-like mass full of microscopic holes. Once symptoms appear, the disease is always fatal. The deadly link to cannibalism. Kuru was most commonly found among the 4 people of Papua New Guinea, particularly during the 20th century, when ritualistic cannibalism was practiced. After the death of a loved one, their body was consumed in funerary rites as an act of respect. However, unknowingly, they were also consuming infected brain tissue, spreading the deadly prions. Women and children were the most affected, as they were more likely to consume the brain, where the prions were most concentrated. This led to entire generations being wiped out by laughing death syndrome. The most chilling aspect of Kuru is the laughter. In the later stages, the patient may experience involuntary, eerie bursts of laughter as the disease damages the brain's control over emotions. This is why it became known as laughing death syndrome. A terrifying legacy of laughter. Kuru is one of the most horrific diseases in human history, turning an act of respect and tradition into a death sentence. It is a chilling example of how a single misfolded protein can destroy the mind, leaving its victims trapped in uncontrollable fits of laughter until the laughter stops forever. Fragility syndrome, when everyone is the same person in disguise. Imagine walking through a crowded street, looking at strangers only to feel an overwhelming paranoia that they are not strangers at all. Instead, you believe that every single person around you is actually the same individual, just wearing different disguises and changing their appearance to deceive you. This is the terrifying world of fragility syndrome, a rare psychiatric disorder that causes people to believe that multiple different individuals are, in fact, a single person constantly shifting forms. What is fragility syndrome? Fragility syndrome is a delusional misidentification disorder in which a person is convinced that someone, often a stalker, enemy, or someone from their past, is following them and taking on different appearances. No matter how different these people look, the affected individual sees them as being the same person in disguise. First described in 1927 by 2 French psychiatrists, Paul Courbon and G. Fail, the syndrome was named after Leopoldo Fragoli, an Italian actor famous for his ability to quickly change costumes and transform into different characters during his performances. For example, a patient might be convinced that their neighbor, doctor, and barista are all the same person, constantly changing their face and clothing to trick them. No amount of logical explanation can convince them otherwise, as their delusion is deeply ingrained. Fragility syndrome is believed to result from abnormal brain function, particularly in areas responsible for facial recognition and emotional processing. A mind that can't escape its own illusions. Living with fragility syndrome is like being trapped in a never-ending psychological thriller. Every person, every interaction, Every familiar face becomes a potential deception. Loved ones are no longer trusted. The world becomes a stage where one single elusive enemy is playing every role at once. A glitch in reality, when everyone is the same. Fragility syndrome is one of the most unsettling reminders of how fragile our perception of reality is. It forces us to ask, how do we truly recognize the people around us? And what happens when our brain gets it wrong? If one day you started believing that everyone in your life was the same person in disguise, how could anyone convince you otherwise? Exploding head syndrome, the nightmare of sudden sound. Imagine lying in bed, your body relaxed, drifting into sleep when suddenly a loud explosion shatters the silence inside your head. It sounds like a gunshot, a bomb, or a deafening electrical surge. Your heart races, your body jolts awake, yet the room remains silent. No actual sound has been made. This is the terrifying experience of exploding head syndrome, as a bizarre and unsettling sleep disorder that turns the quietest moments into a waking nightmare. Exploding head syndrome occurs when a person is falling asleep or waking up, triggering the illusion of an extremely loud noise inside their mind. It is not a physical explosion, but a misfiring of the brain's auditory system, creating a phantom burst of sound. Some describe it as a violent bang, a clap of thunder, or even an ear-piercing scream. Others report flashes of light, electric zaps, or the sensation of an invisible force hitting them. Though completely harmless, the sudden shock can cause intense fear, panic attacks, insomnia, and an overwhelming sense that something is terribly wrong. The exact cause of exploding head syndrome remains a mystery, but researchers believe it may be linked to stress, sleep deprivation, and neurological glitches in the brain as it transitions between wakefulness and sleep. Some theories suggest that the brain fails to properly shut down during sleep, causing it to misinterpret normal neural activity as an explosive sound. Others believe it could be related to disorders like sleep paralysis, migraines, or even minor seizures. Though it can affect anyone, it is more commonly reported by those experiencing high levels of anxiety or irregular sleep patterns. Despite its frightening nature, exploding head syndrome is not dangerous and does not cause any physical harm. However, for those who experience it frequently, the fear of another episode can lead to chronic sleep disturbances and heightened anxiety, trapping them in a cycle of exhaustion and fear. Treatments are often unnecessary, but practicing stress management, improving sleep hygiene, and reducing caffeine intake can help reduce episodes. In severe cases, doctors may prescribe low-dose antidepressants or anti-seizure medications to calm the brain's overactive electrical signals. The strangest thing about exploding head syndrome is how it turns the act of falling asleep, one of the most peaceful moments of the day, into something terrifyingly unpredictable. The brain, usually a guardian of logic and perception, suddenly betrays its own reality, leaving a person caught between wakefulness and an auditory hallucination, so vivid it feels like the world is shattering around them. Yet, when they open their eyes, there is nothing, only silence and the lingering fear that it might happen again. Foreign accent syndrome, when your voice becomes a stranger. Imagine waking up one morning, opening your mouth to speak, and realizing that your voice, your most familiar sound, has changed. You're still speaking the same language, using the same words, but something is eerily different. Your accent is no longer your own. Perhaps you, a native English speaker from Texas, now sound inexplicably British. Or someone who has spent their entire life in France suddenly speaks with a thick Chinese accent. This is the bizarre and unsettling reality of foreign accent syndrome, FAS, a rare neurological disorder that causes people to develop a completely new and unintended accent after a brain injury, stroke, or trauma. Foreign accent syndrome is not a deliberate imitation or psychological condition. it is a genuine neurological phenomenon. The brain, after suffering damage, alters the way it controls speech, subtly changing pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. The result? A completely different accent that doesn't match the person's linguistic background. Though rare, documented cases date back to 1907, with some of the most famous examples including a Norwegian woman who, after a head injury during World War II, began speaking with a distinct German accent, leading to her being shunned by her community. The cause of FAS is usually linked to trauma affecting the brain's language centers, particularly the left hemisphere, which controls speech production. Strokes, head injuries, multiple sclerosis, and even migraines have been identified as triggers. In some cases, the condition resolves over time, while in others, the new accent remains permanently. Though it does not affect intelligence or the ability to communicate, it can be deeply unsettling for those who experience it, leading to identity confusion, social anxiety, and emotional distress. The strangest aspect of foreign accent syndrome is that the new accent is often not a perfect replica of any existing one. It is not as if the brain simply downloads a new linguistic pattern. Rather, it reorganizes speech in a way that happens to resemble an accent. To an outsider, the speaker may sound French, Russian, or Italian, but in reality, their speech is the result of random changes in pronunciation and intonation. This makes FAS both scientifically fascinating and personally distressing, as individuals struggle to reconcile their new voice with their sense of self. Treatment for foreign accent syndrome is limited, as the brain's speech mechanisms are complex and not fully understood. Speech therapy can sometimes help retrain pronunciation, but for many, the change is permanent. What makes FAS so unsettling is not just the physical change in speech, but the existential question it raises. If your voice, the sound that defines you, suddenly becomes unrecognizable, are you still the same person? Werewolf syndrome, when the body refuses to stop growing hair. Throughout history, legends of werewolves, humans cursed to transform into beasts, have terrified and fascinated people. But what if such a transformation, at least in appearance, was real? This is the strange and rare reality of werewolf syndrome, scientifically known as hypertrichosis, a condition that causes excessive hair growth all over the body, including the face. Those affected often resemble the mythical creatures from folklore, earning them names like Wolfman or werewolf people. Hypertrichosis can be congenital, present from birth, or acquired later in life. In the congenital form, the condition is caused by genetic mutations, often leading to a full-body coat of thick hair, even covering the face and forehead. This is incredibly rare, with only a handful of documented cases in the world. In acquired hypertrichosis, excessive hair growth can occur due to hormonal imbalances, certain medications, cancer, or metabolic disorders. Unlike typical hair growth patterns, the condition affects areas that usually remain hairless, such as the forehead, cheeks, and eyelids. One of the most famous cases of hypertrichosis dates back to the 16th century. Petrus Gonsalves, a man from the Canary Islands, was brought to the court of King Henry II of France as a curiosity. His entire body, including his face, was covered in thick hair, yet he was highly educated and even married, with his children inheriting the same condition. Stories like his may have contributed to the creation of werewolf myths, as people in the past sought supernatural explanations for rare medical conditions. Living with hypertrichosis can be extremely challenging, both physically and socially. Throughout history, individuals with this condition were often put on display in circuses and sideshows, labeled as wolf men or bearded ladies. Even today, those with the syndrome may face bullying, discrimination, and social isolation due to their unusual appearance. Despite this, many embrace their condition, challenging beauty standards and proving that uniqueness is something to be celebrated. There is no cure for hypertrichosis, but hair can be managed through laser treatments, shaving, and hair removal procedures. However, since the condition is deeply rooted in genetics or underlying medical issues, hair often grows back. Scientists continue to study the genetic causes of hypertrichosis, hoping to better understand the mechanisms behind hair growth and possibly develop treatments. Werewolf syndrome is a living reminder of how thin the line between myth and reality can be. While ancient legends spoke of humans turning into beasts under the full moon, the truth is both stranger and more tragic. Some are born with a genetic condition that makes them look like something out of folklore, not by choice, but by fate. They're in a world obsessed with appearance. Can we learn to see beyond the fur? Automatic behavior syndrome, when the body moves without the mind. Imagine waking up to find your phone placed somewhere you don't remember, your shoes tied neatly, or even a half-written message on your screen, yet you have no recollection of doing any of it. It's as if your body was functioning on autopilot while your mind was completely disconnected. This eerie phenomenon is known as automatic behavior syndrome (ABS), a condition where a person performs complex actions while in a state of altered consciousness, only to forget them entirely afterward. People with automatic behavior syndrome often appear awake, speak, write, or carry out daily tasks, but their awareness is minimal, and their memory does not register these actions. Unlike traditional sleepwalking, which happens in deep sleep, ABS can occur when a person is extremely sleep-deprived, mentally exhausted, or under the influence of neurological disorders. It is most commonly linked to conditions like narcolepsy, severe insomnia, epilepsy, or brain injuries. The experience can be unsettling, as individuals may find themselves completing routine behaviors such as making coffee, texting, or even driving short distances without any conscious recollection. Since they act on deeply ingrained habits, their movements appear normal, but the mind is operating in a disconnected, dreamlike state. In some cases, people may even respond to conversations, follow instructions, or complete work tasks, only to later realize that their memory has completely erased the event. What makes this syndrome particularly dangerous is that the actions can sometimes be risky. People with ABS have been known to leave the stove on, send confusing messages, or walk into traffic without realizing what they are doing. Unlike full consciousness, where we evaluate choices and consequences, the brain in this state is simply going through the motions, detached from logical thinking. The underlying cause of automatic behavior syndrome is often tied to brainwave disruptions, particularly in regions responsible for alertness, memory formation, and decision-making. Sleep deprivation plays a major role as the brain, desperate for rest, begins to shut down certain cognitive functions while keeping the body operational. In cases related to narcolepsy, ABS can occur as part of sudden sleep attacks, where the person slips into a semi-conscious state without warning. There is no universal cure, but treatment focuses on addressing the root cause. This includes improving sleep quality, managing neurological conditions, and reducing stress levels. In severe cases, stimulant medications or behavioral therapy may be used to help regulate wakefulness and cognitive awareness. Automatic behavior syndrome is a chilling reminder that our brains do not always need our permission to act. It raises an unsettling question. If your body can move, respond, and complete tasks without your awareness, then what truly defines being awake? Sudden unexplained nocturnal death syndrome, the silent killer in sleep. Imagine going to bed feeling perfectly fine, no pain, no symptoms, no warning signs. Then, without any explanation, you never wake up. Your heart simply stops in the middle of the night. This is the horrifying reality of sudden unexplained nocturnal death syndrome (SUDS), a mysterious and terrifying condition where seemingly healthy individuals die in their sleep without an obvious medical cause. SUDS first gained attention in the 1970s and 1980 seconds when young, healthy men of Southeast Asian descent, particularly from Hmong, Filipino, Thai, and Laotian communities, started dying unexpectedly in their sleep. Many of these deaths occurred in refugees who had fled war-torn regions, sparking fear and superstition. Some believed it was caused by evil spirits, while others thought it was linked to extreme stress or genetic predisposition. Modern medicine has identified a likely connection between SUDS and fatal heart rhythm disorders, particularly Brugada syndrome, a rare genetic condition that disrupts the heart's electrical system. The disorder can cause sudden, deadly arrhythmias, especially during sleep, when the heart rate naturally slows. Because Brugada syndrome doesn't always show symptoms, many people who have it never realize they are at risk until it is too late. SUDS is particularly frightening because it often affects young, healthy individuals with no prior history of heart disease. Victims are frequently found in bed with no signs of struggle, just an inexplicable failure of the heart to keep beating. In some cases, there have been reports of people waking up gasping for air or experiencing terrifying sleep paralysis episodes before their death, leading to speculation that SUDS may involve a mix of neurological and cardiac factors. Since the exact triggers of SUDS are still not fully understood, prevention focuses on early detection of heart irregularities. Individuals with a family history of sudden cardiac death are encouraged to undergo ECG tests to check for hidden arrhythmias. For those diagnosed with Brugada syndrome or similar conditions, treatment options include lifestyle modifications, avoiding certain medications, and in severe cases, implanting a defibrillator ICD to prevent sudden cardiac arrest. Despite medical advancements, SUDS remains one of the most chilling and least understood syndromes. It is a stark reminder that even the healthiest bodies can harbor hidden vulnerabilities, and that the line between life and death can be as thin as a single heartbeat. Perhaps the scariest thought of all is this: if death can come so silently in the night, how do we ever truly feel safe when we close our eyes? Fish odor syndrome, when the body betrays you with its scent. Imagine stepping into a room and seeing people wrinkle their noses, subtly stepping away from you. You've showered, used deodorant, and worn fresh clothes, yet an unbearable, fish-like odor seems to follow you everywhere. No matter how much you try, the smell never fades. This is the harsh reality of trimethylaminuria tamao, commonly known as fish odor syndrome, a rare metabolic disorder that causes the body to emit a strong, rotting fish-like smell one that the affected person often cannot detect themselves. This condition occurs when the body fails to properly break down trimethylamine TMA, a chemical produced during the digestion of certain foods like eggs, fish, liver, and legumes. In healthy individuals, an enzyme in the liver converts trimethylamine into an odorless form, which is then excreted. However, in people with tamao, this process does not work properly, leading to a buildup of the odorous compound. As a result, the chemical is released through sweat, urine, and breath, creating a persistent and overwhelming fishy smell. Tamao is often genetic, passed down in families due to mutations in the FMO3 gene, but in some cases, it can develop later in life due to liver disease, hormonal changes, or certain bacterial imbalances in the gut. Interestingly, some people only experience symptoms temporarily, particularly during puberty, pregnancy, or menstruation, when hormonal fluctuations can worsen the condition. One of the most devastating aspects of fish odor syndrome is its psychological impact. Those with the condition often suffer from severe social anxiety, depression, and isolation as they struggle with bullying, rejection, and embarrassment. Many report losing jobs, relationships, and even avoiding public spaces altogether due to the fear of being ridiculed for something completely beyond their control. The fact that they cannot smell the odor themselves makes the situation even more distressing, as they rely on the reactions of others to gauge their condition. Currently, there is no definitive cure for tamao, but symptoms can often be managed through diet and lifestyle changes. Avoiding foods rich in choline like fish, eggs, and soy, taking activated charcoal or copper chlorophyll in supplements to help absorb trimethylamine, and using acidic soaps or lotions to reduce skin odor can all help. Some patients also benefit from certain antibiotics that modify gut bacteria to reduce the production of the smelly compound. Despite being a physical disorder, fish odor syndrome is often misunderstood, with many sufferers dismissed as simply having poor hygiene. Yet, for those who live with it, the condition is a daily battle against an invisible and uncontrollable enemy. In a world that places immense value on personal hygiene and social acceptance, tamao is a cruel reminder that sometimes the body refuses to follow the rules we expect it to. Mind blindness, living without mental images. Close your eyes and imagine a red apple. Can you see its shiny skin, the subtle curves, the light reflecting off its surface? Now imagine standing on a beach at sunset. Can you picture the golden hues, the waves rolling in, the feeling of warm sand beneath your feet? For most people, this kind of mental imagery is effortless, a natural part of thought and memory. But for those with aphantasia, also known as mind blindness, this is impossible. Their minds remain completely blank, no images, no colors, no mental movie reel. They know what an apple looks like, they understand what a beach is, but they cannot see it in their mind's eye. Aphantasia is a rare neurological condition where a person lacks the ability to visualize mental images. It was first identified in the 19th century, but the term was officially coined in 2015 by neurologist Adam Zeman. While many people assume that everyone experiences vivid mental pictures, studies have shown that the ability to see in the mind varies greatly among individuals, and for some, it is completely absent. Surprisingly, many people with aphantasia don't even realize they experience the world differently until later in life, often after a casual conversation where someone describes picturing something in their mind. The realization that others actually see mental images comes as a shock. While aphantasia may sound limiting, it doesn't necessarily affect intelligence, creativity, or imagination. Many individuals with this condition excel in fields like mathematics, science, and philosophy, relying on abstract thinking, logic, and memory rather than visual mental simulations. Some of history's greatest minds, such as Ed Catmull, co-founder of Pixar, and possibly even Nikola Tesla, are believed to have had aphantasia. However, the condition can have an emotional impact. People with aphantasia often report difficulties recalling faces of loved ones, reliving past experiences vividly, or even engaging in guided meditation. Since memories are not visually replayed, they tend to rely on facts, words, and emotions rather than images. Some also struggle with dreaming visually, experiencing more conceptual or non-visual dreams instead of cinematic ones. There is no known cure or treatment for aphantasia, but rather than being a disorder, it is increasingly seen as a unique way of thinking. Some with aphantasia develop strong problem-solving skills, become highly analytical, or express their creativity in non-visual ways, such as through music or writing. In a world dominated by imagery, they remind us that imagination is not limited to what we can see, it's also about what we can understand, create, and feel. Sleep paralysis, trapped between dreams and reality. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, fully aware of your surroundings, your bed, the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through your curtains, the faint hum of the night. But something is wrong. You can't move. Your body feels frozen, as if an unseen force is pressing down on your chest. You try to scream, but no sound comes out. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you see it, a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness, watching you. It moves closer. This terrifying experience is known as sleep paralysis, or Kurabasa nightmare demon syndrome, a phenomenon where a person wakes up but cannot move or speak, often accompanied by vivid hallucinations, a crushing sensation on the chest, and an overwhelming sense of fear. Sleep paralysis occurs when the brain and body fall out of sync during sleep cycles. Normally, when we enter REM rapid eye movement sleep, our body becomes temporarily paralyzed to prevent us from physically acting out our dreams. However, in sleep paralysis, a person wakes up mentally before their body fully regains control, leaving them in a terrifying state of conscious paralysis. Many who experience sleep paralysis report seeing shadow figures, demonic presences, or ghostly apparitions, a phenomenon thought to be caused by the brain being half awake, still partially dreaming while perceiving reality. In some cultures, these figures are interpreted as evil spirits, jinn, or the infamous old hag sitting on the chest, while in modern times, some even believe they are alien encounters. Despite its terrifying nature, sleep paralysis is not considered dangerous, though it can be deeply unsettling. It is commonly linked to sleep deprivation, stress, irregular sleep schedules, and certain sleep disorders like narcolepsy. Episodes usually last a few seconds to a couple of minutes, but for the person experiencing it, time can feel endless. For those who experience recurring episodes, knowing that sleep paralysis is a temporary and natural phenomenon can help ease the fear. The next time it happens, instead of panicking, try focusing on slow breathing and reminding yourself, "This will pass. Double quotes. In the end, sleep paralysis is a chilling reminder of the fragile boundary between wakefulness and dreams, reality and nightmare, a place where the mind, for a brief moment, becomes trapped between two worlds." Morgellons syndrome, the unseen crawlers beneath the skin. Imagine waking up one morning, feeling the familiar warmth of your blanket around you. But as you shift, something feels off. An unsettling sensation moves beneath your skin, like tiny insects crawling or threads weaving through your body. This is the cruel reality for those suffering from Morgellons syndrome, a mysterious and debated condition where individuals experience a sensation of bugs, fibers, or threads moving or crawling beneath their skin. Some describe it as feeling like bugs under the skin or an ever-present itching from invisible creatures. Others insist they can actually see tiny fibers emerging from their skin, ranging in colors from red to blue, white, or black. But the more they search for proof, the more elusive these fibers become. What makes Morgellons so perplexing and disturbing is that, despite the overwhelming sensations, medical tests usually fail to find any biological explanation for the fibers or bugs that patients report. In fact, many doctors classify it as a form of delusional parasitosis, where individuals mistakenly believe they're infested by parasites, though no actual infestation exists. Is it real, or is it all in their minds? This question remains one of the most chilling parts of the syndrome. The fibers that sufferers report often appear to emerge from sores, scabs, or other skin lesions. In some cases, the fibers seem almost unnaturally bright, like tiny threads of silk or synthetic material that don't match anything naturally found on the body. Some patients even claim that the fibers can move, as though they are alive, shifting beneath the skin's surface. But the horror doesn't end there. Along with these disturbing sensations and bizarre skin markings, many individuals with Morgellons also experience psychological symptoms such as anxiety, depression, and a heightened sense of paranoia. The feeling of being invaded by something beyond your control can be terrifying enough on its own, but the uncertainty of whether it's real or imagined only amplifies the distress. Scientists are still grappling with the cause of Morgellons. Some suggest it could be related to Lyme disease, as certain patients with Morgellons also test positive for the bacteria that cause Lyme. Others believe it may be tied to environmental factors, autoimmune disorders, or even a reaction to chemicals or pollutants. But until then, those suffering are left in a nightmare where their bodies betray them, and the truth of what's really happening remains hidden in the layers beneath their skin. Morgellons is not just a physical affliction, it's a psychological and existential torment, where the boundary between the real and imagined becomes impossible to define. Are the threads really there? Is the crawling beneath the skin a hallucination? Or is something truly terrifying happening beneath the surface that we just can't yet comprehend? Phantom limb syndrome, the haunting of a missing limb. Imagine losing a part of yourself, maybe a hand, a leg, or even an entire arm. The trauma of amputation is profound, and the absence is immediately felt in the physical body. But what if, long after the amputation, you could still feel the missing limb? Not only that, but you might feel pain, itching, or pressure in a part of your body that no longer exists. This is the unsettling reality of phantom limb syndrome, where amputees continue to perceive sensations, sometimes vivid, in their missing limbs. The phenomenon often begins shortly after the amputation, as the brain, which has been accustomed to receiving sensory input from the now missing body part, struggles to adjust. It continues to map the limb into its sensory processing system, creating a sense of its presence, despite its absence. For some, this results in a feeling of touch, like the sensation of being touched or held, or even the feeling of the limb moving as though it were still attached. The eeriest aspect of phantom limb syndrome is the pain. Imagine a limb that no longer exists, yet agonizing, burning, or stabbing pain pulses from that very spot. These phantom pains can be so intense that they cause distress and disruption in the person's life, making them feel as if they are still trapped in the pain of their amputation. For some, it's a burning sensation that feels like the limb is on fire. For others, it's an aching or cramping sensation, as if the missing arm or leg is stiff and locked in place. The origin of phantom limb syndrome lies in the brain's neural pathways, specifically in the somatosensory cortex, which is responsible for processing touch and sensation from the body. When a limb is lost, the brain's representation of the limb doesn't vanish immediately. Instead, it can remain in place, continuing to generate sensory feedback that the individual perceives as coming from the now non-existent body part. It's as though the brain, in a final act of defiance, refuses to let go of a part of the self. The psychological effects of phantom limb syndrome can be just as debilitating as the physical ones. The emotional toll, the feeling of being disconnected from one's own body, the frustration of not being able to escape the sensation of a limb that isn't there can lead to depression, anxiety, and a sense of loss that goes far beyond the amputation itself. The body, once whole, now feels incomplete, both physically and psychologically. Interestingly, treatments for phantom limb syndrome focus on retraining the brain. Mirror therapy, for example, uses a mirror to reflect the image of the existing limb, tricking the brain into seeing the missing limb move and relieving some of the pain. Techniques like sensory discrimination therapy and even virtual reality have been explored to help the brain remap itself and adjust to the loss. However, for those who experience it, the sensation of having a missing limb still lingering, still reaching, still aching, is an ongoing reminder of the complex, haunting relationship between mind and body. Phantom limb syndrome is a phenomenon where absence becomes presence, and the body's deep connection to itself refuses to acknowledge the line between what is and what no longer is. The missing limb may be gone, but the memory of it, the ghost of it, will haunt the person forever. Lithopedian syndrome, the stone baby lost in time. Imagine the unimaginable, a pregnancy that, for reasons unknown, ends in tragedy. The baby, unfortunately, does not survive the early stages of development. But then, something strange happens. Instead of being naturally absorbed by the body, the fetus is preserved, frozen in time, and remains inside the mother's womb for years, sometimes even decades. This phenomenon is known as lithopedion, or more chillingly, the stone baby syndrome. Lithopedion occurs when a fetus dies in the womb, usually in the second trimester, and the body's natural processes fail to expel it. Instead, the body encapsulates the deceased fetus in calcium deposits, essentially turning it into a hard, stone-like mass. This phenomenon is believed to occur when the body's immune system works to protect the mother from the decaying tissue, wrapping it in layers of minerals to prevent infection. Over time, the fetus becomes encased in a hardened, calcified shell, preserved and almost mummified, as though suspended in a moment of time. In most cases, the mother remains unaware of the calcified fetus inside her, continuing to live normally, often unaware of the deceased baby that lies hidden within her. Lithopedion is incredibly rare, and many cases are discovered only years or even decades later, often during routine medical procedures like an ultrasound or abdominal surgery. It is a shocking, almost surreal discovery for those who find it a child who never lived, yet still exists within the confines of the body. The condition can remain undetected for so long because the calcified fetus is often small, and in some cases, it might be mistaken for an ovarian cyst or a fibroid tumor. It's not until the mother undergoes surgery or imaging tests for another issue that the stone baby is discovered, usually leaving doctors and the patient herself astonished. But even when discovered, the stone baby can sometimes be left undisturbed. Since the fetus is entirely inert and no longer alive, doctors may recommend simply leaving it in place, as the presence of the calcified fetus typically doesn't pose a health risk to the mother. In some cases, however, the stone baby may cause pain, infection, or complications that require surgical removal. Lithopedion is often a subject of morbid fascination, an unsettling reminder of how life and death intertwine in the human body. The presence of a stone baby encapsulates a story of loss, the passage of time, and the remarkable ways the body copes with trauma. The condition itself is an eerie testament to nature's strange and sometimes bizarre adaptations, where an unremembered life remains preserved, hidden in the shadows of a mother's body. It's a living, breathing paradox life without life. Adipsia, the lost thirst, living without water. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you've forgotten how to feel thirsty. The urge to drink, the deep need for water, is completely absent. Your body continues its daily functions, breathing, moving, thinking, but without the craving for hydration that most of us experience regularly. You could go hours, days, or even longer without drinking a drop, and you wouldn't feel any discomfort. This strange and unnerving phenomenon is called adipsia, or the loss of thirst. Adipsia occurs when the brain's thirst mechanism, located in a region called the hypothalamus, is disrupted or damaged. This part of the brain is responsible for regulating water balance, signaling when the body is dehydrated and in need of fluid. In those with adipsia, the brain fails to send out the usual signals of thirst, leaving the person unaware of their need for hydration. As a result, they may go without drinking water for extended periods, unaware of the potentially dangerous consequences of severe dehydration. The condition is rare, but when it occurs, it can have serious health implications. Since thirst is the body's natural warning system, those affected by adipsia may not recognize the symptoms of dehydration until it's too late. Dry mouth, fatigue, dizziness, or even more severe signs like low blood pressure or kidney failure can sneak up on someone who doesn't feel thirsty, leading to complications that can be life-threatening. Interestingly, adipsia is often associated with damage to the hypothalamus, which can happen due to various causes: brain injury, tumors, infections, or certain neurological conditions. The loss of thirst can also occur alongside other disorders like diabetes insipidus, which affects the body's ability to regulate water levels. In some cases, the condition may arise from psychological factors, trauma, stress, or even extreme depression that alters the way the brain processes bodily sensations. One of the most disturbing aspects of adipsia is that it can easily be misdiagnosed or overlooked. A person might live their life without understanding the need to drink water regularly, unaware of the silent danger of dehydration lurking in the background. This is especially true in older adults, who may also have other health problems that mask the signs of dehydration, or in those with cognitive impairments. While the treatment for adipsia focuses on restoring the body's natural hydration cues, it can be challenging. For those with brain damage, rehabilitation techniques may help to retrain the brain, but in many cases, medical management, such as fluid replacement therapy and careful monitoring of hydration levels, becomes a lifelong necessity. Living without the sensation of thirst is a surreal and unsettling experience. It's as though the body forgets one of its most basic needs, the primal desire for water, a liquid that is so essential to life that we instinctively crave it. Adipsia takes this essential function and erases it, leaving the body in a fragile state, unaware of its own survival needs. It's a quiet reminder of how vital and fragile our internal systems are, and how easily something as fundamental as thirst can slip away, leaving us adrift in a sea of forgotten needs. Alien hand syndrome, the terrifying loss of control over your own hand. Imagine sitting at a table, your hand resting calmly by your side, when suddenly it jerks into action. You try to stop it, but it's as though your hand has a mind of its own. It reaches for an object, grabs it, or even touches your face, completely against your will. You have no control over it. It moves, acts, and grips as though it is someone else's hand entirely. This bizarre and terrifying experience is known as alien hand syndrome, a rare neurological disorder in which a person's hand seems to have its own independent will. The syndrome usually occurs after damage to the brain, typically involving the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerves that connects the left and right hemispheres of the brain. When this area of the brain is compromised, often due to a stroke, brain surgery, or trauma, the usual communication between the hemispheres is disrupted, and the affected hand may start behaving as if it belongs to someone else. The brain's self-awareness breaks down, and the hand becomes an alien entity that no longer seems to belong to the person. The hand may act in a variety of ways. Sometimes it grips objects with great force, even if the individual does not want it to. It might scratch, pull, or pinch the person's own skin, causing distress and confusion. In extreme cases, the hand can even try to undo the person's actions, like unbuttoning clothes, wiping away food they've just eaten, or interfering with tasks they're trying to complete. The individual is fully aware of their hand's actions, but they are powerless to stop them, leading to a sense of disconnection and terror. One of the most unsettling features of alien hand syndrome is the phenomenon of oppositional behavior, where the affected hand seems to act against the will of the person. It may even appear to try to undo the work that the individual is doing, as if it is fighting against the other hand or the person's intentions. In some cases, the hand may seem to take on a distinct personality, with movements and gestures that feel deliberate and purposeful, as though it's a separate entity entirely. Though the condition is frightening, treatment options do exist, though they are often focused on managing symptoms rather than curing the syndrome. Some people with alien hand syndrome may be able to retrain their brain to regain some level of control over their hand with physical therapy, behavioral strategies, or even techniques like mirror therapy, where the reflection of the good hand can help reinforce coordination and control. Medication, including anti-epileptic drugs or dopamine antagonists, may also help reduce involuntary hand movements. Alien hand syndrome remains one of the most eerie and bizarre neurological conditions, where a person's body, specifically their own hand, becomes a foreign entity. The loss of control over one's own body is unsettling enough, but when that body appears to have a mind of its own, it can be utterly terrifying. The person becomes trapped in a nightmare where their hand is an alien force, a haunting presence that no longer listens to them, pulling them into a terrifying battle for their own autonomy. The line between self and other, between what is you and what is not, becomes uncomfortably blurry. Stendhal syndrome, the overwhelming power of beauty and art. Imagine standing in front of a magnificent piece of art, the kind of painting that seems to breathe life, or a sculpture that captivates every fiber of your being. The emotions flood in awe, reverence, and wonder. But suddenly, the beauty becomes overwhelming, and you feel your body start to shudder. A wave of dizziness hits, your heart races, and before you know it, you're fainting, disoriented, or seeing strange hallucinations. This is the eerie phenomenon known as Stendhal syndrome, a rare condition where the overwhelming beauty of art or a stunning environment causes intense physical and psychological reactions. Named after the French writer Stendhal, who famously described his own experience of being overwhelmed by the beauty of Florence's art and architecture, this syndrome is often triggered by exposure to exceptional works of art or beautiful surroundings. Those who experience Stendhal syndrome are not just admiring the art, they are overcome by it. The sensory overload can lead to fainting, dizziness, a rapid heart rate, or even hallucinations. Some people describe feeling as though they are losing control, as if the beauty they are witnessing is too much for their mind and body to process. The physical symptoms may appear suddenly, sometimes while standing in front of a famous painting in a museum or gazing at a historic cathedral. The person might feel their heartbeat quicken, their vision blur, and the room might seem to spin or stretch before their eyes. In extreme cases, people have even fainted in art galleries or been taken to the hospital, thinking something is terribly wrong with their body. The experience is often frightening and overpowering sensation that reality itself is being distorted by the immensity of beauty. Psychologically, Stendhal syndrome can cause profound emotional effects. People who experience it often report feeling a sense of transcendence, a powerful spiritual or emotional reaction to the artwork. But the beauty becomes so intense that it pushes the boundaries of their perception. Hallucinations may include vivid visual distortions, a sense of time distortion, or even an overwhelming feeling of connection to the artwork, as though the viewer has become one with it. The experience of beauty, meant to be enriching, becomes a disorienting and intoxicating force. Although Stendhal syndrome is most often associated with art, it can also occur in response to awe-inspiring architecture, natural landscapes, or other forms of beauty. The psychological trigger is usually the beauty itself, something so emotionally and intellectually stimulating that the brain struggles to keep up with the flood of sensations. It is believed that the syndrome may affect people who are already prone to intense emotional reactions, or those who are particularly sensitive to beauty in the first place. Treatment for Stendhal syndrome usually focuses on rest and calm. Those experiencing its symptoms are advised to step away from the source of beauty and take deep breaths to reorient themselves. However, there is no specific medical treatment for the condition, as it is considered to be a temporary reaction. Some experts believe that people with the syndrome may be particularly vulnerable to psychological and emotional stimuli, and their brains may respond to beauty with a heightened sense of emotional intensity. Stendhal syndrome serves as a reminder of the power of art and beauty, how deeply it can affect the human mind, creating feelings of awe, reverence, and, in rare cases, an emotional overload so intense that it leads to physical collapse. It's as if the beauty before you becomes too much to bear, shattering the boundaries of normal perception and leaving you in awe of the delicate and complex relationship between the mind, the body, and the world of art. Boanthropy, the mind transformed into a cow. Imagine looking at your reflection in the mirror, and instead of seeing a human, you see the face of a cow staring back at you. You begin to feel strange urges, instinctual, animalistic. Your senses sharpen, and without understanding why, you want to eat grass like the animals around you. You may feel a deep, overwhelming need to graze on the earth, to move and act like a cow, to live in a world where your thoughts are no longer human, but entirely animalistic. This is boanthropy, a rare and perplexing psychological disorder where a person believes they are a cow, or sometimes another animal, and starts to exhibit behaviors typical of that animal. The condition, which is a form of psychosis, causes the individual to lose their sense of human identity and adopt that of an animal, typically a cow, though it can involve other animals, like horses or goats. Those suffering from boanthropy might display actions that are entirely non-human, such as attempting to eat grass, mimicking mooing sounds, or trying to mimic the movements of the animal they believe themselves to be. They might also refuse to speak in human language and instead make animal-like sounds. It's as if the mind becomes disconnected from human consciousness and retreats into a state where the person's true nature is identified as something more primal. The origins of boanthropy are largely unknown, though it is believed to be linked to psychotic episodes, severe mental trauma, or neurological conditions that disrupt the normal functioning of the mind. It has been historically associated with people suffering from delusional disorders or schizophrenia, in which the person's perception of reality becomes fragmented and distorted. The condition can also arise as a symptom of bipolar disorder or even severe depression. While the root cause may be different for each case, the result is often a profound dissociation from one's humanity and an immersion into an animal's world. One of the most striking features of boanthropy is the complete and utter conviction the person has in their delusion. They may refuse to acknowledge their true identity as a human, instead insisting they are an animal. They might refuse to speak with humans, preferring to act like the animal they believe themselves to be, grazing on grass or trying to mimic the cow's behaviors. In some cases, they even refuse to eat human food, believing it to be inappropriate for an animal, and will only consume vegetation or plants as if they were grazing in a pasture. Historically, there have been a few documented cases of boanthropy, though they are exceedingly rare. The condition seems to be more common in certain mental health crises, and sometimes it's linked with cultural or religious beliefs. In ancient times, people suffering from this condition were sometimes viewed as being possessed or under the influence of supernatural forces, as their behaviors were so far removed from the human norm. Treatment for boanthropy is focused on addressing the underlying psychological condition that triggers the delusion. Antipsychotic medications, therapy, and sometimes hospitalization are necessary to help the person regain their sense of reality. Over time, with the appropriate care, many individuals can be brought back to a human sense of self, though the condition can be difficult to treat without ongoing psychological support. Boanthropy serves as a chilling reminder of how fragile the human mind can be. The belief that one is an animal, so far removed from humanity, is a poignant example of how the psyche can warp and twist, creating an alternate reality that feels as real as the world around us. When someone's mind decides to become the cow to graze, to moo, to give up all human qualities, it's not just a mental disorder. It's a loss of self, a journey into the primal, into the world of creatures far from human comprehension. Ekbom syndrome, the nightmare of creeping parasites. Imagine the sensation of tiny creatures crawling across your skin, underneath, burrowing into every pore. It's an itching, tingling feeling that grows stronger with every passing second, as though your very body is swarming with invisible parasites. You look down, but there's nothing there, no bugs, no pests. Yet, you can feel them, their tiny legs scrabbling against your skin, making you feel like you're being consumed from the inside out. This is Ekbom syndrome, also known as delusional parasitosis, a terrifying condition in which a person becomes convinced that their body is infested with parasites or bugs that aren't actually there. At the heart of Ekbom syndrome is a delusion. The individual believes that their skin or internal organs are being attacked by parasites, bugs, or other foreign organisms. The sensation of crawling, biting, or stinging insects is so real and vivid to them that they may feel the need to scrape, scratch, or pick at their skin constantly, searching for the non-existent creatures. Some may even go as far as to wash their skin repeatedly or apply chemicals in an attempt to rid themselves of the imagined pests. Despite the lack of physical evidence, there are no visible bugs, no signs of bites. The belief in infestation is unwavering and consumes the person's thoughts. The cause of Ekbom syndrome is not always clear, but it is thought to be linked to neurological or psychiatric conditions, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or severe depression. Sometimes it arises after a traumatic experience or when the person is suffering from a long-term illness. It can also occur as a side effect of substance abuse or as a result of taking certain medications. There are even cases where Ekbom syndrome is associated with physical illnesses, such as Parkinson's disease, where neurological damage can lead to the development of delusions. The suffering caused by Ekbom syndrome goes beyond the mental delusion. It has a physical toll as well. The constant feeling of being attacked by invisible creatures can lead to severe anxiety, stress, and insomnia, as the person is unable to rest because they are convinced their body is crawling with pests. This can create a vicious cycle where the constant scratching and picking can lead to skin infections and wounds, further reinforcing the belief that something is wrong with the body. For the person suffering from Ekbom syndrome, the world around them seems filled with unseen dangers. Every piece of clothing, every surface, every part of their body becomes a potential breeding ground for parasites. Their lives become consumed with checking their skin for signs of infestation, or even believing others have been infected too. Relationships may suffer, and social isolation can occur, as the sufferer might try to convince others of their delusion, or simply avoid social contact out of embarrassment or fear. Treatment for Ekbom syndrome typically involves antipsychotic medications to help alleviate the delusional thoughts, as well as therapy to address any underlying mental health issues. A combination of cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) and supportive care may help the individual come to terms with their delusions and learn to manage their symptoms. In cases where the syndrome is linked to another medical condition, treating the underlying disorder may also alleviate the symptoms. Ekbom syndrome serves as a disturbing reminder of the mind's power over our perception of reality. It's a condition where the brain, consumed by a delusion of parasitic infestation, can turn the body into a battleground, convincing the individual that they are not in control of their own flesh. The true horror lies not in the bugs themselves, but in the mind's ability to create a reality so convincing that it feels more real than the world outside. Exploding teeth syndrome, the unfathomable explosion of teeth. Imagine the jarring, impossible sensation of your teeth suddenly exploding within your mouth without warning, without explanation. One moment you're chewing, smiling, or simply talking, and the next, a sharp, violent explosion erupts from your jaw, accompanied by intense pain and the terrifying sound of shattering enamel. This is exploding teeth syndrome, a bizarre and haunting phenomenon that was reported in the 19th century and remains largely unexplained to this day. This rare condition, though mysterious and unsettling, has been documented in several cases where individuals experienced an unexplained, sudden detonation of their teeth. The eruption typically occurs with no external cause. A person might not have been involved in an accident, nor are they experiencing any obvious dental issue like cavities or infection. In some instances, the teeth actually break apart with such force that pieces of enamel are ejected from the mouth, leaving the person in a state of shock and excruciating pain. Some reports describe the sensation as if the tooth has exploded from within, sometimes leading to bleeding or severe swelling of the gums. Exploding teeth syndrome is so rare that it's been referred to as a medical anomaly, and the cause of such an extreme event remains largely unknown. While there have been some hypotheses, ranging from tooth decay to gum infections, many experts still struggle to pinpoint a definitive cause. One theory suggests that the pressure buildup from certain types of infection, such as abscesses, could result in the explosion of the tooth, but this remains speculative. Others point to potential neurovascular issues, where nerves or blood vessels inside the tooth become overly sensitive and cause spontaneous rupture. A possible connection to bizarre chemical reactions within the body has also been considered, as certain elements or deficiencies could theoretically contribute to spontaneous dental explosions. However, no scientific consensus exists, and many medical professionals treat the phenomenon as a type of delusion or hallucination in extreme cases, though this theory is often met with skepticism due to the reported physical damage and pain. While exploding teeth syndrome seems to have been more commonly documented in the past, particularly during the 19th century, it hasn't been entirely eradicated in modern medical literature. Some isolated cases have emerged in the present day, but they remain extremely rare. Those who experience this mysterious phenomenon often seek immediate medical care, fearing that something more serious or life-threatening is at play. The intense physical and psychological trauma caused by such an event can leave lasting effects on the person's health, including anxiety, dental trauma, and fear of oral health. Treatment for those affected by exploding teeth syndrome often revolves around immediate pain management, dental examination, and attempts to stabilize the tooth if any remnants of the explosion remain. If the event is connected to an underlying infection or tooth decay, standard dental interventions are required to address the root cause. However, because the cause is so difficult to determine, the treatment often focuses on symptom relief and monitoring. The strange and haunting nature of exploding teeth syndrome speaks to the unpredictability of the human body, how something as routine as teeth, something we take for granted, can suddenly and violently betray us. It serves as a chilling reminder that the line between health and sudden, inexplicable calamity is much thinner than we often realize. The fear of one's own body turning against them in such a dramatic and unfathomable way is what makes this phenomenon so deeply unsettling, not just physically, but psychologically as well. The body, it seems, can sometimes be its own worst enemy. Jeanne d'Arc syndrome, the voice of the divine. Imagine waking up one morning with an overwhelming, undeniable feeling that you've been chosen for a higher purpose, that divine intervention has entered your life. You hear voices, feel a presence around you, and suddenly you believe that you are on a mission from God, a mission to speak truths that only you can reveal to the world. This is Jeanne d'Arc syndrome, named after the iconic French heroine, Joan of Arc, who, in the 15th century, claimed to hear the voices of saints guiding her actions and inspiring her to lead an army. People experiencing this syndrome are consumed by the belief that they have been chosen by a higher power to carry out a holy mission, often leading them to engage in prophetic behaviors and make divine proclamations. Those affected by Jeanne d'Arc syndrome often experience vivid auditory hallucinations, where they believe they are hearing the voices of angels, saints, or God directly speaking to them. These voices might guide them towards certain actions, such as making predictions about the future, revealing hidden truths, or even taking on roles of religious leadership. The person may feel an intense sense of destiny, as if they have been selected for a grand purpose, much like Joan of Arc herself, who led France in battle after claiming to be guided by divine voices. The affected individual may interpret their experiences as a form of divine communication and believe they have a responsibility to spread this knowledge, often through prophecy or public declarations. While Jeanne d'Arc syndrome is deeply connected to the concept of religious delusions, it goes beyond simple religious fervor. People experiencing the syndrome may believe that they are receiving direct divine instructions and may even claim to have visions or dreams that they interpret as revelations of a greater truth. Their sense of purpose and conviction becomes so powerful that it can overshadow rational thought, leading to actions that may seem irrational to others, but feel absolutely essential to the individual. The condition is often classified under the broader umbrella of delusional disorders or paranoid psychosis, and it can be associated with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or even severe depression. Some sufferers may also experience depersonalization, where they feel detached from reality, as though they are merely a vessel for the divine voice or message. In extreme cases, individuals might act on their delusions, believing that they must fulfill their divine mission at all costs, potentially leading to dangerous or self-destructive behaviors. Treatment for Jeanne d'Arc syndrome typically focuses on addressing the underlying mental health condition causing the delusions. Antipsychotic medications and cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) are common methods of managing the disorder. With appropriate intervention, the person can often regain a sense of reality and perspective, though the deeply ingrained belief in their divine mission may persist for a time. Jeanne d'Arc syndrome serves as a haunting reminder of the power of the human mind to transform ordinary experiences into something profoundly spiritual, sometimes to the point of obsession. While Joan of Arc's story is one of courage, faith, and triumph, her historical example has also given rise to this syndrome, where individuals believe they too have been touched by the divine, though tragically, often in a way that leads them down a path of delusion. What begins as a divine calling can quickly spiral into a dangerous sense of grandiosity, blurring the line between spiritual enlightenment and a deeply rooted mental illness. Vampire syndrome, erythropoietic protoporphyria, the curse of sunlight. Imagine stepping out into the sunlight, and as soon as its rays touch your skin, an unbearable burning sensation begins to spread through your body. The light feels like acid seeping into your pores, and within minutes, your skin begins to blister and redden, as if it's been exposed to intense heat. Over time, the pain intensifies, and your skin starts to warp and deform, an almost vampiric transformation, where the body reacts to the sun's touch as if it were some kind of curse. This is vampire syndrome, or erythropoietic protoporphyria (EPP), a rare and incredibly painful genetic disorder that makes sunlight unbearable, causing extreme sensitivity to light and resulting in serious skin damage. People with this condition are essentially allergic to sunlight. Their bodies struggle to process heme, the iron-containing molecule in red blood cells, leading to a buildup of protoporphyrin, a substance that becomes activated by sunlight. When the skin is exposed to UV rays, these substances react, causing an intense burning sensation, blistering, and skin lesions that can become permanent deformities if not properly managed. The debilitating pain felt by those with vampire syndrome is similar to a severe sunburn, but it doesn't go away after a few hours. It lingers often for days and can cause irreversible damage to the skin. In addition to the skin symptoms, the condition can also affect the liver, as the buildup of protoporphyrins can lead to liver dysfunction in some cases. Those with EPP often have to avoid sunlight altogether, leading to significant lifestyle changes. They may cover up their skin with heavy clothing, wear special sunglasses, or seek out UV protective clothing to shield themselves from the sun's rays. In some extreme cases, individuals with vampire syndrome can only venture out at night or in completely shaded areas, leading to an existence where daylight is something to be feared rather than enjoyed. Erythropoietic protoporphyria is typically diagnosed through blood tests and skin biopsies that measure the level of protoporphyrins in the body. The treatment options for this syndrome are limited, as there is no cure for the condition. Patients are usually advised to avoid direct sunlight and may be given medications that help manage symptoms. Some people may benefit from beta-carotene supplements, which can help reduce the sensitivity to light, but they still must live with the constant vigilance to protect their skin from the sun. In severe cases, a liver transplant may be necessary if liver damage becomes life-threatening. Vampire syndrome, though rare, serves as a reminder of how the body can become at odds with the very elements of nature that are essential for life. The myth of the vampire creatures who shun the light and live only in the dark takes on a terrifyingly real form in those suffering from EPP, where the sun itself becomes the enemy. The metaphor of vampires, once relegated to stories, becomes a lived reality for those who must retreat from the daylight to avoid the crippling effects of this unusual and unforgiving condition. The fear of the sun, of becoming disfigured or incapacitated by the very force that gives life, is the daily burden of those living with vampire syndrome, a condition as rare and eerie as the legends it echoes. Cannibalism syndrome, Wendigo psychosis, the uncontrollable hunger for flesh. Imagine feeling an overwhelming, insatiable craving that gnaws at you from deep within, a hunger so powerful it feels as if it's consuming your very soul. It starts innocuously, maybe as an odd thought, a fleeting idea, but soon it grows, becoming irresistible. This isn't just a desire for food. It's a hunger for something far more disturbing, the flesh of another human being. This is cannibalism syndrome, or Wendigo psychosis, a rare and terrifying mental condition rooted in cultural folklore and the uncontrollable urge to consume human flesh. The term Wendigo comes from the Algonquian-speaking Native American tribes, where it represents a mythical creature, a malevolent, cannibalistic being that preys on humans, driven by an insatiable hunger. The Wendigo psychosis is the psychological manifestation of this folklore, where an individual develops a compulsive desire to eat human flesh, often accompanied by delusions and hallucinations. Those who suffer from this condition may believe they are not only compelled to consume others, but that they must do so in order to survive or to rid themselves of an uncontrollable inner force. The syndrome is more than just a passing urge. It is often accompanied by a complete disconnect from reality. Individuals with Wendigo psychosis might feel a deep sense of guilt and shame for the thoughts they experience, but can feel utterly powerless to stop the urges. This psychological disorder often develops in situations of extreme stress or isolation, sometimes triggered by starvation, when the mind begins to break down and latch on to desperate solutions. It has been linked to cases of cannibalism during famines, survival situations, or cultural rituals, where the act of consuming human flesh was justified as a means of survival or as part of a twisted spiritual experience. As disturbing as it is, Wendigo psychosis is often described as delusional or psychotic behavior. In some cases, the affected person might be surrounded by people they care about and yet feel compelled to harm them or eat them in order to relieve their hunger. There is often a paranoia associated with the syndrome, where the person believes they must hunt others to stave off an internal demon or entity that controls their cravings. In extreme cases, the individual may actually engage in cannibalism, driven by an overpowering belief that eating human flesh is necessary for their survival or psychic release. Though rare in modern times, Wendigo psychosis is still discussed in psychiatric circles and remains a fascinating subject of study. It is often categorized as a psychotic disorder or delusional parasitosis, though its roots are deeply embedded in the lore of indigenous cultures. Treatment of the syndrome typically involves antipsychotic medication, psychotherapy, and careful monitoring of the individual to ensure they don't act on their urges. Many sufferers of Wendigo psychosis experience significant distress and trauma once they are able to recognize the reality of their actions, often leading to severe mental health crises. The idea of cannibalism is one of the most horrifying and taboo thoughts a person can have, yet Wendigo psychosis brings that fear into an individual's mind and soul, leaving them vulnerable to a grotesque and uncontrollable desire. The shame, guilt, and psychological torment of such a craving are unimaginable, yet this condition shows how the human mind, under extreme stress or mental illness, can warp reality and make a person believe they are compelled to commit acts of horror. The concept of the Wendigo, this ancient, cannibalistic spirit, reminds us of the deep primal forces within the human psyche that can emerge under extreme conditions, where the boundaries between humanity and monstrosity blur into terrifying delusions. Pica syndrome, the craving for non-food objects. Imagine walking through a room filled with everyday object, stones, dirt, broken glass, and suddenly you feel an intense, irresistible urge to consume something that isn't food at all. It starts small. Perhaps you lick a pebble, or absent-mindedly bite on a piece of chalk. But then it grows, and before you know it, you're eating dirt, rocks, or even pieces of glass. This is the strange, unsettling reality of pica syndrome, a condition that causes individuals to crave and ingest non-nutritive substances, things that are not meant to be eaten, but are consumed due to an overpowering compulsion. People with pica develop an abnormal desire to consume a variety of non-food items, such as dirt, geophagia, paint chips, hair, ice in some cases, though ice can be considered food in certain cultures, chalk, soap, or paper. The objects consumed can range from harmless to potentially dangerous, leading to serious health complications. The reasons behind this compulsive behavior are not entirely understood, but it is often linked to nutritional deficiencies, such as iron, zinc, or calcium deficiencies. In some cases, the craving for non-food items can also be attributed to psychological disorders, stress, or even pregnancy, where some pregnant women may crave substances like clay or dirt. While many people occasionally crave unusual things, those with pica find themselves unable to resist these urges. The syndrome is often considered a form of compulsive eating behavior, where the individual's impulses override their awareness of the risks involved in consuming such items. It can become a dangerous cycle, as ingesting non-food items can lead to poisoning, intestinal blockages, or even serious infections. Ingesting objects like glass, sharp metals, or plastic can cause immediate harm, often requiring medical intervention. Interestingly, pica isn't just limited to eating strange objects. It can also involve the compulsive chewing or sucking of things that are not typically consumed, like ice or rubber bands, although these can sometimes be harmless in moderation. However, when the desire becomes overwhelming or dangerous, it becomes a medical concern. Children, especially those with autism or other developmental disorders, are particularly susceptible to pica, often consuming substances like dirt or paint. However, adults too can develop this disorder, sometimes due to underlying mental health issues, such as obsessive-compulsive disorder (OCD), schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. Treatment for pica often involves addressing the underlying causes of the cravings. If a nutritional deficiency is the culprit, supplementation and dietary adjustments may help alleviate the symptoms. Cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) is frequently used to treat the compulsive behaviors associated with pica, helping individuals manage their impulses and find healthier ways to cope with their urges. In some cases, medication may be prescribed to help control underlying psychological conditions. Though pica may seem bizarre, it highlights a deep psychological and physiological struggle. For someone with pica, the world around them is filled with objects they are driven to consume, objects that hold no nutritional value but become irresistibly compelling. The craving becomes a battle of will body and mind, where the individual is caught between the reality of consuming harmful substances and the compulsion to satisfy an urge they can't quite explain or control. The strange, almost primal desire to eat things that are not food is a stark reminder of how the human body and mind can break down and become disconnected from reality, leading to behaviors that seem utterly alien, but are deeply rooted in both biological and psychological factors. Todd's syndrome, the distorted perception of time. Imagine sitting in a room, watching a clock on the wall. You glance at it, and a minute feels like an hour. Time stretches and warps in front of your eyes. Then, you look back, and it's as if several hours have passed in the blink of an eye. This is Todd's syndrome, also known as time distortion syndrome, a curious phenomenon where a person experiences extreme shifts in their perception of time. It's as if the normal flow of time, the ticking of seconds, the passing of minutes, becomes disorienting and difficult to grasp. People with Todd's syndrome may find themselves feeling that time either slows down dramatically or speeds up uncontrollably, often with no clear reason. For some, moments can feel like they last forever, while for others, hours can vanish in an instant. The experience is subjective, and the individual might feel completely out of sync with the world around them, as though they are trapped in a surreal state where the usual markers of time no longer apply. The syndrome is often linked to hallucinations and altered states of consciousness. In some cases, people may experience it after neurological events, such as seizures or migraine attacks, which disrupt the brain's normal processing. Some may experience it during moments of intense stress or fatigue, when the brain struggles to maintain a steady sense of time. Others may find themselves affected by Todd's syndrome during periods of depersonalization or derealization, where the self feels disconnected from reality, and the passing of time becomes a blurry, fluid concept. The sensation of time slowing down or speeding up can feel intensely unsettling. For example, during the sensation of time moving too slowly, a person may feel trapped in an endless moment, overwhelmed by the weight of every passing second. On the other hand, when time speeds up, a person may feel as if they are falling behind in life, losing precious moments without being able to catch up. This warped experience of time can cause significant psychological distress, as the individual struggles to reconcile their inner experience with the reality they observe around them. Interestingly, Todd's syndrome shares similarities with time distortions reported during out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences. Some people report experiencing a time dilation effect where time seems to slow down during moments of intense emotional impact or life-threatening situations. In Todd's syndrome, however, the distorted perception of time is often spontaneous and disconnected from any particular external event, making it all the more confusing. In many cases, Todd's syndrome is temporary, fading once the underlying issue, be it a seizure, a migraine, or stress, is addressed. However, for those who experience it regularly, it can become a source of constant disorientation. Treatment generally focuses on underlying conditions such as managing migraines, reducing stress, or addressing any neurological abnormalities. Cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) may also help individuals cope with the anxiety and confusion that can accompany this altered perception of time. Despite its unsettling nature, Todd's syndrome is a fascinating glimpse into how the human brain processes time, and how that process can sometimes be disrupted in extraordinary ways. The subjective nature of time, how we perceive it, how we live in it, and how it shapes our lives becomes distorted in such a way that the world around the person seems to warp and shift, leaving them with an eerie sense of being outside the ordinary flow of life. Othello syndrome, the delusional jealousy of betrayal. Imagine being consumed by an overpowering belief that your partner, someone you trust deeply, is betraying you. No evidence, no hints, just an intense and unshakable conviction that they are unfaithful. You scrutinize every word, every glance, every movement, looking for signs of deceit that aren't there. This is Othello syndrome, a psychological disorder characterized by delusional jealousy, the irrational and persistent belief that one's partner is cheating, even in the face of clear evidence to the contrary. The condition is named after the tragic character Othello, from Shakespeare's play, who is consumed by jealousy and distrust of his wife, Desdemona, ultimately leading him to tragic actions. Similarly, those suffering from Othello syndrome believe that their partners are involved in infidelity, regardless of any facts or rational explanations. The delusion is powerful, often leading to obsessive behaviors such as spying, questioning, and accusing the partner of cheating, which can spiral into severe relationship turmoil and emotional distress. People with Othello syndrome may not have any real basis for their beliefs. In fact, their partner might be completely loyal, but their mind distorts reality, feeding the suspicion and paranoia. This delusional jealousy can manifest in constant surveillance, such as checking their partner's phone, emails, or social media to find proof that doesn't exist. The fear of betrayal becomes so overwhelming that it overrides any sense of trust or logic. This syndrome is typically linked to underlying mental health conditions such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or severe depression, and it often occurs in individuals with a history of psychosis or substance abuse. The delusions might be triggered or exacerbated by stressful life events, trauma, or previous experiences of betrayal. In some cases, neurological conditions affecting the brain, particularly the areas involved in emotional regulation and perception of reality, have been associated with the onset of Othello syndrome. The delusions of infidelity can become all-consuming. Partners often feel isolated as the individual with Othello syndrome's behavior grows more erratic and distrusting. The impact on relationships can be devastating, with the person suffering from the syndrome frequently accusing their partner of actions they have never committed. Emotional manipulation and control can also play a role, as the affected individual may try to dominate their partner through their jealous accusations. Othello syndrome is a complex disorder, often requiring psychiatric treatment. Treatment typically involves antipsychotic medication, particularly when the delusions are severe or tied to conditions like schizophrenia. Therapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT), can help the individual confront and challenge the irrational thoughts and beliefs that fuel the jealousy. Therapy might also focus on couples counseling to help the relationship survive and recover from the damage caused by the delusions. In the end, Othello syndrome is a tragic example of how the mind can become ensnared by delusions and paranoia, leading to distorted perceptions of reality. It serves as a reminder of how powerful the emotions of jealousy and insecurity can be when they become untethered from reason, and how they can destroy trust and love in a relationship, even when there's no betrayal to be found. The syndrome highlights the fragility of human emotion and how unchecked it can drive individuals to create their own, often devastating versions of reality. Dorian Gray syndrome, the obsession with youth and the pursuit of perfection. Imagine looking into the mirror every day and seeing not the passage of time, but a perfect, ageless version of yourself staring back. The wrinkles, the lines, the subtle signs of aging, none of them exist. But with every passing year, the desire to remain youthful grows stronger, so much so that you find yourself repeatedly chasing a flawless exterior through a never-ending series of cosmetic procedures. This is the reality of Dorian Gray syndrome, a psychological condition in which a person becomes obsessed with maintaining a youthful appearance, refusing to acknowledge the natural process of aging, and turning to plastic surgery as a means of staying forever young. Named after Oscar Wilde's iconic character, Dorian Gray, who fears aging and seeks to escape the natural decline of his body by using his portrait as a vessel for the ravages of time, Dorian Gray syndrome reflects an unhealthy fixation on youth and beauty. In Wilde's story, Dorian's portrait ages and deteriorates while he himself remains forever youthful and unscarred, a metaphor for the dangerous consequences of denying the inevitable passage of time. Similarly, individuals with Dorian Gray syndrome see themselves as immune to aging, believing that cosmetic enhancements can stop time and preserve their youthful appearance indefinitely. People affected by this syndrome may undergo multiple surgeries, from facelifts, Botox injections, and liposuction, to eyelid surgeries and even more extreme procedures, often in an attempt to reverse any signs of aging. The obsession becomes all-consuming, with individuals seeking out one surgery after another, always chasing perfection. They might focus on their skin texture, facial symmetry, or body shape, pushing the boundaries of what is deemed normal or natural in the quest for eternal youth. Self-image becomes entirely tied to appearance, and the person may feel anxious or depressed if they believe their looks are deteriorating or if their surgeries don't meet their expectations. At its core, Dorian Gray syndrome is a manifestation of deep insecurity. The person fears the loss of their attractiveness and the aging process, which is often tied to feelings of irrelevance or loss of value in society. In many cases, the person is afraid of mortality and believes that youth is the key to being loved, admired, or respected. The pressure to remain beautiful, often driven by media portrayals of youth and perfection, exacerbates this need to constantly improve one's appearance. Psychologically, the syndrome can be associated with a number of underlying conditions. It is often linked to body dysmorphic disorder (BD), where the person has an obsessive preoccupation with perceived flaws in their appearance, even if those flaws are non-existent or minor. It can also be tied to narcissistic personality disorder, where an individual has an inflated sense of self-importance and seeks external validation, or it may stem from low self-esteem and a deep fear of irrelevance or aging. The implications of Dorian Gray syndrome are significant. Excessive surgery can lead to physical complications, such as scarring, infections, or even irreversible damage to the face or body. Emotionally, individuals may feel trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction, constantly seeking to fix something that may never be enough. It can lead to psychological distress, depression, and anxiety, particularly when the person realizes that no amount of surgery can stop the inevitable effects of aging or the deep-rooted fears they have about their worth. Treatment for Dorian Gray syndrome often involves a combination of psychological therapy and education about the natural process of aging. Cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) can help individuals confront their fears about aging and improve their body image and self-esteem. In some cases, working with a therapist to uncover the deeper emotional causes of the obsession with youth and beauty is crucial. Support groups may also be beneficial, offering a space for those struggling with body dysmorphia or similar conditions to talk openly about their experiences. Dorian Gray syndrome serves as a warning about the dangers of placing too much value on external appearance and the constant pursuit of youth. It reflects society's obsession with beauty and perfection, and how the fear of aging can lead individuals to lose sight of what truly matters: the acceptance of time and the beauty that lies in the authenticity of one's journey through life. The story of Dorian Gray, both tragic and cautionary, highlights the psychological and emotional toll that comes with denying the natural process of aging and the deeper wounds we carry that can't be healed with surgery or superficial beauty. Delusions, existential denial, the belief that the world does not exist. Imagine waking up one day and, with every passing moment, becoming increasingly convinced that the world around you is nothing more than an illusion, that nothing you see, touch, or experience is real. People, places, and objects that once seemed tangible and concrete now feel distant, dreamlike, or non-existent. This is the essence of delusions, existential denial, a rare and unsettling psychological condition in which a person firmly believes that the external world, including other people and even their own body, does not exist. It is a profound detachment from reality, where the individual's mind denies the validity of everything in their environment. The name delirious negation comes from the French term for delusions of negation, and it encapsulates a state of complete disbelief in the existence of the world. Individuals suffering from this syndrome may experience an overwhelming sense of disconnection, feeling as though they are trapped in a dream, or that the world is an elaborate illusion created by their own mind. They may question whether anything truly exists, including their own body, and may even deny the presence of those closest to them. Perceptions of reality become so distorted that the person begins to reject the validity of everything they once took for granted. For some, this condition may manifest in extreme forms of derealization and depersonalization, where the person feels as though they are observing themselves from the outside, disconnected from their own experiences. In other cases, the person may develop a philosophical detachment, convinced that the world they experience is a mental construct or even that they have been living in an elaborate simulation. This type of delusion is not only deeply disorienting, but also profoundly lonely, as it isolates the individual from their sense of self and the people around them. Delirious negation often occurs in the context of more severe mental health disorders, such as schizophrenia, severe depression, or bipolar disorder, and can also be triggered by intense stress, trauma, or the use of hallucinogenic substances. The experience of existential negation can also be a part of certain psychotic episodes, where the mind becomes completely detached from reality, unable to process the external world in a coherent way. The cognitive disconnect can lead to a profound sense of despair and confusion, as the person's perception of what is real becomes fractured. The delusion that the world does not exist can take many forms. Some individuals may believe that they are the only real being in the universe, and that everyone else is a mere figment of their imagination. Others may feel that the world has been created solely for them to experience, and that nothing outside their perception holds any real substance. In more extreme cases, people suffering from delirious negation may claim that life itself is meaningless or that they are trapped in a never-ending simulation, unable to escape. The psychological impact of this condition is severe, as the person struggles to navigate a world they can no longer trust. Relationships may disintegrate as the person perceives others as non-existent, and they may become increasingly withdrawn or isolated. The denial of the world's existence can lead to an inability to engage in basic life activities, eating, sleeping, working, and can lead to deep existential crisis. Treatment for delirious negation typically involves antipsychotic medication, especially if the delusions are associated with a broader psychiatric condition such as schizophrenia. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT), can help the individual reconnect with reality and challenge the irrational beliefs that fuel the delusions. Grounding techniques and mindfulness practices are also helpful, as they encourage the individual to reconnect with the physical world and their senses, thus diminishing the intensity of the delusional thoughts. At its core, delirious negation highlights the fragility of reality and how the mind can become so overwhelmed by its own perceptions that it begins to reject the very world it exists within. It's a reminder of how deeply the mind can shape our experience of life, and how the denial of existence can unravel a person's sense of self and place in the world. For those who suffer from this delusion, the journey back to a grounded reality can be long and difficult, but with treatment, it is possible to rebuild a connection to the world that feels real again. Codard's delusion, the walking ghost syndrome. Imagine waking up one day with the unshakable belief that you no longer exist. Your heart isn't beating. Your lungs aren't filling with air. Your blood has dried up. Your organs have rotted away. And you're nothing more than a hollow shell, a corpse that somehow still walks among the living. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter how much evidence is presented, you are absolutely convinced that you are already dead. This is the terrifying reality of Cotard's delusion, also known as walking ghost syndrome, a rare psychiatric disorder in which a person genuinely believes they have ceased to exist. Some individuals with this condition may insist that their organs have vanished, that their blood no longer flows, or that they are merely an empty vessel, a living corpse without function or purpose. In extreme cases, they may even refuse to eat, drink, or care for themselves, believing that a dead person has no need for such things. The condition was first described in 1880 by the French neurologist Jules Cotard, who encountered a patient, Madame X, who claimed that she had no brain, no nerves, no chest, and no intestines. She believed she was immortal, but also that she had already perished. With nothing to sustain her, she eventually starved to death, convinced that food and water were meaningless to someone who no longer truly existed. Cotard's delusion is often associated with severe depression, schizophrenia, and neurological disorders, including brain injuries and dementia. Brain scans of individuals with this syndrome have shown abnormalities in the parietal and temporal lobes, which are responsible for self-awareness and perception of reality. These distortions in brain function lead to an overwhelming sense of detachment from the body, making it difficult for the affected person to recognize their own existence. For some, the delusion takes on a supernatural aspect. They may believe they are a ghost, a zombie, or even a cursed being, wandering aimlessly in a world that no longer acknowledges them. Others experience it as a kind of personal apocalypse, where they are the only dead thing in a world still teeming with life. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Cotard's delusion is the emotional void that accompanies it. Unlike typical anxiety-based delusions, where the sufferer might be panicked or distressed, many people with Cotard's experience a deep, cold indifference. They may calmly explain their non-existence as though it were an undeniable fact, unbothered by the implications of their supposed death. Treatment for Cotard's delusion is challenging, as the person's perception of reality is fundamentally altered. Traditional psychotherapy is often ineffective on its own, as the individual cannot simply be convinced that they are alive. Instead, a combination of antipsychotic and antidepressant medications, as well as electroconvulsive therapy has proven effective in many cases, helping the brain restore normal perception of existence. Cotard's delusion is a haunting glimpse into the fragile nature of human consciousness. It shows how the mind can betray itself, trapping a person in a nightmarish belief that life has already ended, even while their body still moves, breathes, and exists in the world. For those who experience it, reality itself becomes an unsolvable mystery, one where they are lost in the space between the living and the dead. Apotemnophilia body integrity identity disorder BIDE, the urge to amputate. Imagine waking up every day with the overwhelming feeling that a part of your body, a leg, an arm, a hand, does not belong to you. It is there, physically attached, but it feels as foreign as if it were someone else's limb, an unnatural extension that you were never meant to have. The sight of it in the mirror fills you with discomfort, a gnawing sense of wrongness that will not fade. The only solution, the only way to finally feel whole, is to remove it. This is the unsettling reality of apotemnophilia, also known as body integrity identity disorder, BIDE, a rare and deeply misunderstood condition where individuals experience an intense, persistent desire to amputate a completely healthy limb because they feel it is not a part of their true self. Unlike psychotic disorders, people with BIDE are fully aware that their thoughts are unusual, but the desire remains uncontrollable. Those affected by BIDE often describe their unwanted limb as something extra, something that should not be there. It's not just a casual thought, it's an all-consuming belief, a disconnect between the body and the mind, leading to overwhelming distress. Some compare the experience to gender dysphoria, where the body does not align with one's internal identity. For them, The missing limb is what would make them feel complete. Many people with BIDE go to extreme lengths to achieve their goal. Since most surgeons refuse to perform elective amputations on healthy limbs, some individuals take drastic actions, self-inflicted injuries, frostbite, or even life-threatening accidents in the hopes of forcing a doctor to remove the limb. Others may seek underground surgeries, risking infection, disability, and even death. Despite its psychological nature, BIDE is not yet fully understood. Brain imaging studies suggest that it may be linked to abnormalities in the right parietal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for body perception and spatial awareness. This suggests that BIDE is more than just a mental fixation. It may be a neurological disorder, where the brain fails to recognize certain limbs as part of the body. BIDE is distinct from self-harm or psychosis. It is not about wanting to suffer, nor is it caused by delusions. Instead, people with BIDE believe that removing the limb will bring them peace. And in some documented cases, after amputation, individuals have reported immense relief and a newfound sense of harmony with their body, though the ethical implications of elective amputations remain highly controversial. Currently, there is no definitive treatment for BIDE. Therapy can help manage the distress, but it rarely eliminates the urge. Some experimental treatments, such as brain stimulation techniques, are being explored to alter the brain's perception of body ownership. However, the medical world continues to debate: should amputation be considered a valid medical solution for a psychological condition? BIDE challenges our fundamental understanding of identity and body ownership. It raises uncomfortable questions about what it means to feel whole, and whether medical ethics should allow people to alter their bodies in pursuit of psychological well-being. For those living with BIDE, the battle is not against disability, but against a body that feels like it does not belong to them at all. Thank you for listening this far. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments.